Nightline begins now with me, Adrian Seet. News making the headlines. Fire at intake station blamed for major blackouts. Power fully restored. And MPs who leave their party will lose their seat under anti-hopping bill. Thanks for joining us. The Naga National Berhad has given its assurance that electricity supply in the country is reliable and stable, as indicated by the quick restoration of power supply following disruptions in several areas earlier on Wednesday. TNB President and Chief Executive Officer Dato' Baharudin Din said the national grid itself had smart features that facilitated the work of tracing the problem and restoring supply. TNB said the blackout, which occurred in several areas in the peninsula, was caused by an equipment failure at the Yongping North Main Input Substation PMU in Johor. Dato' Baharudin said that the PMU breakdown was an isolated case and did not involve any damage, and the substation was fully operational. He also apologized to all consumers for the supply disruption and said TNB would conduct a detailed investigation together with the Energy Commission to come up with preventive measures. Meanwhile, TNB said that most of the affected areas saw their electricity successfully restored in stages as early as 20 minutes after the disruption occurred at 12:39 p.m. and that the issue was fully rectified at 3:02 p.m. Following the nationwide blackout, a 26-second video clip showing the fire at a substation has been making its rounds on social media. Earlier on Wednesday, it had been reported that several parts of Peninsular Malaysia, especially the Klang Valley, had been facing power disruption. The situation also interrupted rail services, airports, and traffic lights. Malaysians took to social media to voice their complaints about the power outages, with some mentioning places in Pulau Pinang, Negeri Sembilan, Perak, and Pahang having similar issues. Meanwhile, the Johor TNB confirmed that the fire at the transmission main intake station in Yongping had not affected users or any areas in the state. TNB Johor General Manager Muhammad Noor Mat Seth said that checks had been carried out at the main entrance substation, PMU Yongping Utara, where the sparks and flames were detected. He added that despite not being affected by the massive power outages that occurred in the Klang Valley and several other states on Wednesday, the state's TNB had opened an operation room to prepare for the eventuality of a power outage. In the meantime, the Ampang and Sri Petaling LRT line services are fully recovered at 1:35 p.m. after the power disruption interrupted their services for almost an hour. Rapid Rail Syndrome Berhad confirmed that the disruption had affected 11 stations from the Bandar Tun Razak LRT station to the Pusat Bandar Puchong LRT station. In a statement, it said the situation had caused the trains to move slower and had stopped longer at the platforms. It added that commuters affected by the power outage have been offered a free one-way travel coupon that can be redeemed at its customer service counters. Many Malaysians also took to social media to vent their frustrations and concern over the major blackout which affected several parts of the country. This video of a blackout at a shopping mall in Subang Jaya, Selangor, was viewed by more than 59,000 times, besides being widely shared. A similar situation was shared by a social media user in Sri Kembangan. Another shopping mall that was affected on Wednesday was Suria KLCC in the city centre. The disruption lasted about 2 hours. In Kuala Lumpur, it was reported that the blackout had caused many traffic lights in the city to malfunction. The Fire and Rescue Department said it received multiple distress calls in the Klang Valley following the sudden power outage. Selangor Fire and Rescue Department Director Norazam Khamis said 11 reports involved malfunctioned elevators. A member of parliament elected by the people through the general election will lose the seat that was won if he or she switches party, or commonly known as party hopping. The matter is contained in the Constitution Amendment Bill number 3 on the provision of the prohibition of members of parliament from party hopping, which was tabled for a second reading by Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob in the Dewan Rakyat on Wednesday. The Prime Minister said the same applies to independent MPs who, after being elected to the House of Representatives, joins a political party.
Mana-mana ahli Dewan Rakyat yang bertukar parti politik atau mana-mana ahli Dewan Rakyat yang meninggalkan parti politik yang beliau menjadi calon semasa pilihan raya untuk menjadi ahli Dewan Rakyat bebas akan terhenti menjadi ahli Dewan Rakyat dan perlu mengosongkan kerusi.
Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri, however, said a member of parliament will not lose his seat if he or she was dismissed by his or her party, or if his or her political party is dissolved or deregistered. The bill also repeals the 5-year ban on those who resign as members of parliament. Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said also included in the bill is the authority of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to make this law applicable at the state level through a gazette with the permission of the head of state. Meanwhile, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said the Special Select Committee set up to make recommendations on an amendment to the Constitution regarding the prohibition on members of the Dewan Rakyat from switching political parties had been given due consideration to all issues raised in relation to the bill. This included the implications of drafting certain provisions related to the matter. In other news, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said the government and the opposition have agreed there is no need for a new written agreement between them to replace the Memorandum of Understanding or MOU on the transformation and political stability signed in September of 2021. However, he said despite being unwritten, the understanding meant to ensure the well-being of the people and political stability in the country could still be continued.
Jadi soal sambung tak penting, ya. Yang pentingnya adalah persefahaman untuk kepentingan rakyat tu boleh kita teruskan. Itu yang penting. Kerjasama bertulis saya rasa tidak ada lagi. Kita sudah bersetuju. Kita sama-sama bersetuju tidak perlu ada perjanjian baru, tidak perlu lagi. Tidak perlu ada perjanjian baru ataupun persefahaman yang baru, tidak perlu. Ya. Saya mesti aku dengan keputusan parti saya. Jadi saya dah maklumkan kepada mereka, UMNO dah buat ketetapan tidak sambung.
When asked about the expiry date of the MOU, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said the MOU will expire when Parliament is dissolved. He said the MOU only mentioned that the next general election shall not be held before July 31st and that the date was not the expiry date of the MOU. Meanwhile, the amendment bill to prohibit members of the Dewan Rakyat from changing parties has been regarded as a legal commitment to the people, which enables the restoration of the integrity of politicians, the political system and the country's democracy.
Dan kita anggap ini satu permulaan yang sangat bermakna, sangat bersejarah. Kerana dia ada kesannya bukan dari segi undang-undang perlembagaan, tetapi pengertian moral, integriti ahli parlimen.
Tetapi kita kena terima hakikat bahawa Yang Amat Berhormat selaku yang menandatangani MOU bersetuju mewujudkan Akta Lompat Parti sebagai komitmen kita dalam negara kita untuk mewujudkan political resetting dalam negara kita.
The Tobacco and Smoking Control Bill, also known as Tobacco Generation Endgame Law or GEC, aimed at snuffing the smoking habit and protecting the health of Malaysians, was tabled at the Dewan Rakyat on Wednesday. Tabled for the first reading by Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin, the law will apply to those born in 2007 onwards and not 2005 as initially proposed. Now, he said the bill is expected to be debated upon and passed during the current Dewan Rakyat meeting. If passed, Malaysia will not only ban smoking but also prohibit the ownership of tobacco and vape products by those born after 2007. Apart from this, shopkeepers and cigarette vendors are also not allowed to sell smoking products to those covered by the ban. Earlier, Kyrie in a tweet said Malaysia is the second country to do so after New Zealand tabled a similar bill for its first reading on Tuesday. The government will not hesitate to take action against those who abuse fake and unrecognised titles and awards in organising activities and events. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Parliament and Law, Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar, said such offences could be charged under the Offences Relating to Awards Act or Act 787 and punishable with a fine of up to 500,000 ringgit and jail of up to 20 years.
Pertubuhan MBDM adalah sangat bertepatan dikala pihak kerajaan sedang giat menguatkuasakan Akta 787 atas kesalahan yang berhubung dengan Anugerah 2017. Penguatkuasaan akta ini adalah bagi membendung penyalahgunaan gelaran dan juga darjah kebesaran yang tidak dikira dan palsu.
Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi said this in his speech at the dinner launching for the Council of Dato' and Datuk Malaysia, which was read out by Dato' Abdul Shukur Mahmud. He said that some people believe that by using the titles, they will be able to convince and fool the public that they have a certain status and credibility amongst the community, adding, what is more worrying is that these people misuse these titles for causes involving fraud and other crimes. He added, rigorous enforcement is important to preserve the unique status and significance of the awards, titles and honours conferred by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the Sultans and state governors.
Restoring abandoned housing projects. Are bad projects good for business? Can this business be sustained? What are the opportunities and growth prospects for the abandoned property segment? And how to set the ultimate priority to benefit the people? Money Matters with NCT Group of Companies this Saturday at 5 p.m. on TV3.
The Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riyatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah on Wednesday received the credentials of 6 foreign envoys to Malaysia at Istana Negara. Also present at the ceremony was Raja Permaisuri Agong, Tunku Haja Aziza Amina Maimuna Iskandaria. 3 of the 6 foreign envoys are residing in Malaysia, namely Menzi Sifio Dilamini from Eswatini, Muhammad As-Sadiq Masood Atia from Libya and Emir Salim Yüksel from Turkey. The non-resident envoys are Kathos Jibao Matai from Sierra Leone, Elegio Alberto Salas de Leon from Panama and Bruni Gabarito Segera from Dominica. Also present were Foreign Minister Dato' Sri Saifuddin Abdullah and Foreign Ministry Secretary General Dato' Amran Muhammad Zin. Malaysia has proposed that partners of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF, should collaborate to establish a centre of excellence that would provide a more cohesive and structured platform towards facilitating seamless and dynamic exchanges of ideas and recommendations. Senior Minister of International Trade and Industry, Dato' Sri Muhammad Azmin Ali, said that such a centre should be set up in order to bring together experts in areas such as supply chain resiliency, energy sector transformation and decarbonisation of emission-intensive industries. Making the call at the virtual IPEF ministerial meeting, Dato' Sri Muhammad Azmin said the ministry strongly believes there is a need to go beyond the general scope and area of cooperation to incorporate programs, action plans and the requisite legislation supported by capacity building, technical assistance and funding. He said this at the 2-day virtual meeting chaired respectively by US Trade Representative Catherine Tai and Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo and attended by ministers from Australia, Brunei Darussalam, Fiji, India, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. Dato Sri Azmin also stressed that issues such as labour, environment, digital economy and food security are imperative to the well-being of not only the present generation, but generations to come, as well as extend onto the geopolitical and geo-economic fronts. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has cut its economic growth forecast for Malaysia this year to 5.1% from 5.6% previously. According to its latest World Economic Outlook, the global economic risks are overwhelmingly tilted to the downside. The IMF also cut global growth forecasts, warning that risks from high inflation and the Ukraine war were materializing and could push the world economy to the brink of recession if left unchecked. Global real GDP growth is expected to slow to 3.2% in 2022, with a forecast of 3.6% issued in April. Previously, world growth had rebounded in 2021 to 6.1% after the COVID-19 pandemic crushed global output in 2020 with a 3.1% contraction. Micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, are urged to seize opportunities available under MATRADE's E-Trade Program 2.0 to boost exports through cross-border e-commerce marketplaces. Now, according to its Senior Director, Khairul Anwar Abdul Halim, currently there are 50% of the 1.25 million ringgit fund yet to be disbursed for this year. To date, the E-Trade 2.0 program has assisted 445 companies with almost 970,000 ringgit disbursed.
Kita masih lagi ada allocation lagi untuk 2.0 ni. So saya gesalah supaya syarikat-syarikat yang ingin menceburi dalam e-dagang ini untuk bertemu dengan kita, bertemu dengan MATRADE dan kita akan cuba bantu mereka dalam mendapatkan mereka e-trade program punya insentif.
SMEs have a significant opportunity or runway for us at Malaysian SMEs to sell to the world. We have market access to 190 countries. Think about how many offline exporters are selling to 10 markets. We have access to 190 markets.
Under the E-Trade 2.0, MSMEs will be offered two schemes of export facilitation initiatives, namely the onboarding scheme worth 5,000 ringgit and the digital marketing and training scheme worth 20,000 ringgit for each company respectively. 5 top categories for MSMEs on eBay are auto parts, home and garden, health and beauty, cell phones and accessories, as well as collectibles.
And on my website, I just the star merchants. So we need to.
Coming up, Russia to pull out of International Space Station. At least 4 people have died and 60 others were injured in a powerful earthquake that struck the northern Philippines on Wednesday. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck northern Luzon, the country's most populous island, at 8:43 a.m. local time. The agency originally designated the quake at 7.1 magnitude before downgrading it to 7.0, while its epicenter was about 13 kilometers southeast of the small town of Dolores Abra province with a depth of 10 kilometers. 2 deaths were recorded each in Abra and Benguet, and the quake also caused at least 58 landslides which affected about 218 towns in 15 provinces. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology in the meantime said citizens should brace for any aftershocks, but added it had not issued any tsunami warnings because it was detected inland. As tensions continue to grow between Russia and the West over the ongoing war in Ukraine, Moscow on Tuesday announced it will quit the International Space Station ISS after 2024. The announcement, however, while generally seen as bad news for international cooperation in space, does not mean Russia is giving up its galactic ambitions, with Moscow suggesting it will create a new orbital station of its own. The decision, reported by the Russian media, was announced during a meeting between Russia's President Vladimir Putin and Yuri Borisov, the newly appointed Director General of Roscosmos, Russia's space agency. Borisov, who replaced predecessor Dmitry Rogozin after he was personally removed as head of Roscosmos by Putin earlier this month, called the decision to go solo and build Russia's own space station raising the bar in the space industry and the program's main priority. Former Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has obtained a 14-day extension of his short-term visit pass, STVP, which will mean he can stay in Singapore until August 11th. Previously, it was understood that he was initially given only a 14-day STVP. Last week, Singapore's Immigration and Checkpoints Authority said that visitors from Sri Lanka who enter Singapore for the purpose of social visits will generally be issued a STVP with a duration of up to 30 days. A Sri Lankan cabinet spokesperson in the meantime on Tuesday said he believed Rajapaksa may eventually consider returning to his country, although the date of his return remains unknown. The spokesperson added that Rajapaksa was not in hiding and would be treated in accordance with his status as a former president upon his return to Sri Lanka. 4 Super League matches were played Wednesday night. Pahang edged Selangor 2-0, while Negeri Sembilan beat Terengganu 2-1 and Kuala Lumpur beat Kedah by the same margin. Meanwhile, Sarawak suffered a 4-0 trouncing at the hands of JDT at the Stadium Negeri in Kuching. Haswan Bakri opened the scoring in the 13 minutes, and Bergson's goal 7 minutes later gave JDT a 2-0 lead at the break. Muhammad Shami Safari added JDT's third goal in the 79th minute before Fernando Forestieri completed the route from the spot in the 90th minute. Manchester United has completed the signing of Leandro Martinez from Ajax for a fee of $68.3 million, with the Argentina international signing a 5-year contract. Now, the transfer will see Martinez reunite with his former Ajax head coach, Erik ten Hag, at Old Trafford. Primarily a centre-back, despite only being 5 feet and 9 inches tall, the 24-year-old can also play at left-back and in central midfield. He is the third signing of the Ten Hag era, following the capture of left-back Tyrell Malacia from Feyenoord and the fee transfer of Christian Eriksen. We're going to take a short break. When we return, Paul Young gets 13 years jail for raping his maid. Don't go away. With Nightline. Trono Assemblyman Paul Yong Chu Kyong was sentenced to 13 years jail and 2 strokes of the cane by the Ipoh High Court after he was found guilty of raping his maid in 2019. However, the court allowed his application for a stay of execution pending his appeal. Judge Dato Abdul Wahab Muhammad handed down the sentence on Yong after finding that the defence had failed to raise reasonable doubt at the end of its case. The court also allowed Yong bail of 30,000 ringgit with 1 surety and ordered him to surrender his passport to the court. Yong, a former DAP member, was accused of raping his 23-year-old maid at his house in Merudesa Park on July 7, 2019. The charge was framed under Section 376, subsection 1 of the Penal Code. In Perak, a woman and her boyfriend were remanded for 7 days from Tuesday to assist in the investigation into the death of an 8-month-old baby who was believed to have been abused. Perak Police Chief Datuk Myor Faridala Trash Wahid said the remand order against the woman and her boyfriend, both aged 30, was to facilitate investigations under the Penal Code.
Peran awal yang kita terima daripada pakar forensik ataupun doktor yang membuat postmortem tersebut, dia gunakan penebalan objek ataupun objek tumpul, objek keras dalam mencederakan baby berusia 8 bulan.
He said this at a media conference after opening the Pulau Pangkor police station on Wednesday. He said the man, a policeman under suspicion, was arrested in Sungai Siput, while the woman, who is a private nurse, and her husband divorced 6 months ago. According to him, there were new and old injuries on the baby's body, and investigations were still underway to find out the cause of the injuries.
And that wraps up Nightline this time around. Before we leave, let's take a look at visuals of several tornadoes as it touches down in Stratton, Colorado, captured by several storm chasers. With that, I'm Adrian Seet. Thank you for watching and stay safe, Malaysia.